I think your goals are always changing in life too. Like I think when I first got into property, I sort of thought, oh yeah, 10 properties is where I'm going to get to. But then as I sort of started investing in property, you sort of think, oh, I could buy another property, or I could go on holiday, and then you sort of migrate to what's more important. So I mean, yeah, obviously I'd like to keep going down the property and investing and getting another few properties under the belt. But 10 properties used to be what I thought was the number. But at the same time, like, one property can have the same value as 10 properties. It's sort of just yeah. But yeah, for me at the moment, I'll probably look at doing something again when I get back from Africa. So probably in 12 months' time, I'll look at going again, I think. Deep down, I know I probably should be doing something now, but I mean, I'm more interested in my travel than getting another property at the moment.
Hello and welcome. You're listening to Dashdot Insider, the auditory epicenter for passionate property investors seeking a life of freedom, choice, and abundance. And when it comes to freedom and choice, you will seldom find a better example than the guest that we have for us here today. His name is Ronald Smith, and we go by Ron. And we're going to be digging into your journey because it is a little bit of something I would call a bit of an inspiration, a little bit of motivation for people who are at the younger end of the property investment scale. How old are you, Ron?
I'm 31 at the moment. I'll be 32 in a couple of weeks' time, actually.
All right. Now, you've been in Australia for quite a while, about 12 years.
About 12 years, yeah.
And most recently, you've acquired 2 properties with us here at Dashdot. And so I'll just sort of let everyone know so that we understand the landscape. And then we'll get into what makes this so interesting. And I'll give everyone a hint. It's the travel. So the first property that we have here is it's a regional area in Queensland. It's in Rocky. Purchased for $350,000. The latest val has come in, and that was in May of this year. We got a lot of valuations. If you've listened to this podcast, you've probably heard me mention May of 2024 a lot. We got a lot of valuations cycling through at that time. The val was $555,000, right? So that's sort of 4 or 5 months ago. So by now, that was $205,000 in growth at that point. By now, it would not surprise me at all if you could add another 50 on that. May well be pushing up towards the 600. So could easily be 250,000. I guess we'll find out in another couple of months. So that's a massive gain. The total cash that you needed to put into that was a little over 100, which means that the return on that cash that you put in, you've already doubled that money. Plus, you've still got the original amount. So it's basically the equivalent of getting a 300% return on your money, which, you know, you'd have to do pretty well in the stocks to get anything near that. The second property you purchased for $370,000, also in Queensland. This one was in Townsville. The latest val, again in May, was $432,000. So we've got a nice little 62K uplift in that one as well. So overall, the portfolio is looking very, very healthy. But let's get to the most interesting part. Your passion seems to be travel, Ron. Is that about right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So how could you, I mean, you've lived in Australia for 12 years, but you've managed to travel a lot while you're investing. So can you walk us through what that's been like?
Yeah, key that I've found is that if you're overseas and you're not working, the last thing you want to be doing is put money into a portfolio to keep it afloat. Because that sort of digs away your travel funds. But if you can make investments and then sort of disassociate yourself with it to an extent that you're not having to put anything into it while you're away and let it grow in the background, that's what I found was the key. I've had it before where you're traveling and you're paying money into a mortgage, and it's sort of not only that, but you don't really get to travel as freely as well as you want to because you're sort of worried about what's going on in the background. But yeah, positively geared properties, I reckon, is the way to do it if you're going to not be working and paying into it every week.
Okay, so I would say most people will fall into one of 2 camps. There are people that are sort of like, I need it to be positively geared, maybe because it's in a trust. And so if it's not positively geared, then it can impact your borrowing capacity and things like that. Or you can end up, you don't get the tax benefit necessarily in the same way. And then there's the other camp where it's like, no, I want to feed the property because I'm looking for the growth. So if I have to put in $100 a week, $150 a week, then I'm prepared to do that because that's investing, right? And when we do it in the share market, we say I'm investing in the share market. When we do it in property, we tend to go, shit, the property's costing me a fair bit. But a lot of people are prepared to do that because it's $100, $150 a week because they're looking at the growth. Now, I guess what you're saying, and correct me if I've got this wrong, but it sounds like if you want to travel, then the positively geared side becomes really, really important.
But very important, yeah. And I guess it goes back to like the asset vs liability as well. Like if you're living in your principal place of residence, you're the person that's paying the mortgage. You're reliant on paying that money every week. Like that's your liability is to step up and meet that mortgage every week. But if you've got somebody else in there and it's covering costs, then that's a liability. And what I've found, like for getting more loans as well, like say you've got two positively geared properties and then you're going for another one. Like whatever that is that you're making money off, that then becomes an asset to your borrowing capacity, as opposed to say you're paying $500 or $600 a week on a mortgage. That's deducted from what the bank will see as you able to meet in the loan.
So you've heard of our theory of constraints that we have here at Dashdot?
Yes, yeah.
The 3 C's, we're always talking about this because it is so important. You have capital, you have cash flow, and you have credit. Credit normally gets taken care of because if you have cash flow and you have capital, then normally banks are going to be able to give you the credit. A lot of people find it a real challenge to solve for the cash flow side of things. So making sure that you have positively geared properties can be very useful in that financial sense. They are very, very hard to come by these days, though. I think the market has sort of woken up and the vast majority of cash flow positive properties have sort of been snapped up at the moment. So it is a little bit trickier these days for a lot of people out there.
Yeah. I guess it depends on time in the market as well, though. I mean, once you've owned something for 3 or 4 years, it becomes a lot easier to have it positively geared, even with these higher interest rates.
Right. Okay. Well, we have been talking to a lot of I've been talking to a lot of people in the last little while, a lot of clients, and they're looking at legacy, setting things up for their children. And so if you're 20, 22, 24, something like that, you can work hard now. You can get into a couple of properties. You might need to feed them a little bit at the moment, but by the time you're 26 or 27 or 28, they could well be positively geared. They could be growing in equity. And at that point, like for you, the positive geared nature of the properties, even if they weren't positively geared right from the off, meant that, after whatever time, suddenly you've got that freedom. And it's a great age. It's a great time of your life to have that sort of freedom where you can just sort of travel. It's positively geared. Was it making you, was the positive cash flow from the properties, did that fund the travel as well?
No, it hasn't funded it, but I've got a principal place of residence that's negatively geared. So the two positively geared properties offset that, and it becomes about evenly geared overall. That's including sort of few minimal sort of bills and stuff.
Right. So effectively, that means that your entire portfolio is neutral and you have somewhere to live.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I currently rent my place out under the 6-year no capital gains tax rules that have been recently introduced. But yeah.
So that's okay. That's all perfectly legal. Although anyone listening, speak to your accountant, speak to your mortgage broker, speak to your financial advisor. Usual disclaimer on the podcast, not financial advice. We give general advice, we give property advice, but we don't give financial advice. So across the portfolio, it's nicely neutrally geared. 3 properties that are all tenanted at the moment. So your only overheads are your rent. So if you decide to go on a trip, then you don't have any costs in Australia that you really need to worry about.
Nothing at all. No, it's much easier to get up and go. And I got some good friends that let me stay with them for periods of time, which is always helpful.
That's good. I mean, you're at the perfect age to be able to do that, and it's awesome that property sort of unlocked the opportunity now for you. As you mentioned when we were talking before we hit the record button, you've got a bit of a trip planned up. What's that about?
Yeah, my friend and I, in June next year, we're going to drive from Scotland to South Africa.
Okay.
So I'm looking forward to that. So we're planning about 6 months for it.
6 months. Okay, that sounds like a long time and a long way to go. How important is your property portfolio in that time?
Well, good, because I think the thing I find with traveling, especially like extended travel, is you don't want to go away, do something, have a great time, but then come back and have to build everything back up again. Like I'm fortunate enough now that while my friend and I are doing that, things in the background will be growing, you know. So it's not like you're saving up for a holiday, you're going and spending all your money, you're coming back, you're saving up. Like equity will keep growing in the background, hopefully. But yeah, that's the idea. And I think for me, it's like once you do that, it means you can sort of not worry about things. You can sort of really enjoy the travel instead of sort of worrying about what's going to happen when you get back.
And so, looking at your portfolio, the rate at which it's growing, it's not unlikely that it would grow maybe by 50, maybe a bit more $1,000 over the course of that trip. So that must be a pretty awesome feeling. It's like, yep, I've got my 3 properties. I've got a little bit of a travel fund. Africa's probably not the most expensive country to travel in. You've got a bit of a travel fund. You can take 6 months off. And when you get back, there's every chance you're going to be $50,000, probably more, richer or wealthier than you are at the moment.
Yeah, a 6-month holiday for free.
Yeah, okay. And it's built on the back of property. Now,
yeah,
what's interesting to me about that is so many people, they decide, okay, I'm going to, especially in their 20s. I don't know that you've ticked over to 31 now, but in their 20s, it's like, okay, I'm working a job, save. Okay, now I can afford a holiday, or I can afford to do this, or I can afford this car. I can do that sort of thing. So I'm just going to go on a holiday, and then I'm going to come back, and I'm going to save it again because I'm in my 20s. I've got plenty of time. Your approach is somewhat different. You've started purchasing investment properties and using your PPOR essentially for investment purposes. What made you think of that?
Well, I did it wrong the first couple of times.
Okay, well, tell us about those.
So, like, my ex-partner and I, we bought a couple of houses in Canada, coming on probably 10 years ago now. I remember the first house bought for 205,000, and then had it for like 5 years, like renovated it, and got fuck all growth. You put like a lot of time and effort and money into it, and then like you still get something back for it, but nowhere near as if you just sort of bought something in the right area at the right time. And then yeah, bought and flipped another one, and then sort of similar scenario, but not all that great. And then I bought something in a capital city, and then sort of lived in it and financed it, and got really good growth out of it. But you're still having to be there connected to it. And then with COVID and stuff, I pretty much just worked flat out for 3 years, and got a bit of a.
What do you do?
I'm a diesel fitter, so I work between sort of mining or tunneling. Quite a lot of it's sort of project work. So I sort of worked flat out for 3 years during COVID, and then got a bit of a bank together, and then invested it in a couple of Dashdot properties.
What interests me about that part as well is that you'd invested cash, hard-earned cash, right? Being diesel fitter, it's not shuffling papers, right? You know, you're out there, you're doing the hard work. It's hard yakka, and you invested that money into properties. The properties didn't really perform the way you hoped or planned. And then, yet, as soon as you've saved up enough capital again, you've kind of decided, no, I'm still with property.
You see so many people doing well out of it, you know, and it is a case of like if you do buy something in the right area at the right time, that's a key factor. And even like with the renovations and stuff, I did a lot of it myself to try and save money. And you're coming home after work, doing a couple of hours, going back to work, it can come a bit. You get the shits with it after a while. But yeah, that's what sort of attracted me to Dashdot when I could see some of the results that you guys have done. I thought this might be easier, and I can go elsewhere and travel while something's growing for me, you know.
Right. So option A, buy a property without that much data around the decision of where to buy, but use your sweat, use your energy, spend a couple of hours every night trying to add value to the property so that you can get profit, which is basically your sweat. It's your effort creating the profit, right? And you're not getting a dollar amount for each hour that you spend. You're sort of waiting until the end, and then you get a big amount, hopefully, if everything goes right. Versus option B, just buy in the right area, go on holiday for 6 months, come back, and you're richer anyway.
Yeah, and I think anyone who's into property has gone down the rabbit hole several times of learning all about a property and learning all about this and that, and then you have to educate yourself on it. And a lot of it for me goes in one year and out the other year. Like I'm more of a hands-on kind of worker. I'm not very good at sitting at a computer, sort of researching.
A lot of people do go down the rabbit hole, but they make a couple of mistakes and it burns them. And they decide, no, property's rubbish. I'm not gonna bother. Was there anything special that made you think, oh no, I still believe in? I've made a couple of mistakes, but I still believe in the asset. I still believe in property.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the leverage of money. If you got 50 grand and then you go and put 50 grand on a share and it comes back with 100% return, that's a huge risk for like fluctuation of a share like that. Whereas if you get 50 grand, leverage it 10%, then you've got 500 grand to play with. Put it into property and it goes up, say, 10% in a year. That's not unheard of, but you're still getting 100% return on your money with limited risk factor. I guess that for me is what sort of pushes me towards property.
It's a very analytical approach and not an emotional approach. So many people out there have an emotional approach when it comes to buying property. What was it like for you when you were buying your first property with Dashdot?
Very easy. Very easy. I'd be at work thinking about something else. I'd get a phone call and you guys would get called, found this property, or can you send us this? And so it was the whole process is very easy, as opposed to when you're doing it yourself, you're trying to think about everything. You're trying to sort of organize this and organize that. And I just jumped on board and used your guys' solicitors, your guys' finance, your guys' everything. Still to this day, use your accountants and everything. So yeah.
What about emotionally when you're buying the first property? Is it sort of like, oh, it's a lot of capital, I'm trying it again?
Yeah, it is, but I think you've got to figure whether you trust someone else's judgment or your own. Like if you've got a team working and you've got experts in a lot of different fields, I'd probably put my money in their hands before I put it in mine, you know?
That's a very responsible attitude. That's a very...
Especially after you've bought a couple of houses in Canada, you sort of think, oh yeah, maybe there's better place here.
All right. From your perspective, I know that as a buyer's agency, we see a lot of changes in the market. From your perspective as a buyer and not the agency, what kind of things are you noticing a bit different in the market these days?
I mean, money's a lot more expensive to borrow at the moment. You're gonna, yeah. I think a lot harder to get a loan at the moment, and you're not going to be able to, like you said earlier, get something positively geared as easy at the moment. So it's I guess a different strategy.
Yeah. When you purchased, the interest rates were a bit lower. Were they positively geared from the start?
Yeah. So I think one loan was principal and interest on 2.24%, and the other one was interest only on 3%. And they've both jumped out of there. I think I bought one on a 2-year fixed, and the other one was variable straight away. But yeah, it's ascended gradually the whole time. And then my PPR has jumped out of a 2.2% as well. So everything's above 5% at the moment.
Okay, nice. And the yields obviously, if you're giving if you're putting in rental increases as the prices are going up, then that's eating away at the mortgages or eating away at any debt that you have on them.
Exactly. I mean, the property in Townsville, it's a duplex, and when I bought that, it was yielding 8.4%.
Right.
Very good. Yeah.
Have you had any rental increases since then?
Yeah, dramatic. Yeah. Fairly. Yeah. But I mean, I run it through the real estate. I don't look after myself, and they're a good deal. They know what the market's doing. They know what everything should be doing.
I get a strong impression that you like to outsource a lot of your thinking on property to various experts so that you can focus your thinking on the stuff that you actually enjoy, like the travel, and planning that out.
To be honest with you, I don't get excited about a rental up or a rental down, or you know what I mean? Like it's an investment. Just let the investment do what an investment should do. Let the people that know what they're doing do it. I think you got to oversee things to a degree. You can't just put all your trust in someone's hand and not watch what's going on. But I mean, let people that are paid to do something worry about something.
Right. Well, what recommendations would you have now, given that the market is a little bit different? What advice would you give someone who wants to do what you've done, and that is get enough of a portfolio to support some travel if you're in your 20s or early 30s?
I think people romanticize about the fact of buying a house where they grow up, and I think that's where a lot of the emotion comes from. If someone growing up in Sydney at the moment, it's completely unattainable to buy a house in Sydney unless you're doing something really special, you know. So I think it's important to look at other areas outside where houses are a lot cheaper, and you can sort of build it that way.
Okay. Whereabouts are you based at the moment?
In Piermont in Sydney.
Okay, so that's a long way from Queensland where you've been purchasing. Did you have the properties that you bought in Canada, the ones that the mistake ones? How far away were you from those actual properties?
No, I was there at the time.
Okay. Whereas with these ones, Sydney to Rockhampton, it's not super close. How did you feel about that kind of distance?
Nah, fine, absolutely. I haven't been inside either of the houses, or I haven't even seen either of the houses I bought with Dashdot.
Okay. All right. And doesn't seem to be causing any problems.
No, not at all, right? But that's what I mean. Like, I think as long as you don't have an emotional attachment to things, what does it matter? You know? I think, yeah, emotions tend to sway your opinions. Like it can make it less of a pragmatic approach on an investment strategy.
Right. Now, one of the things that we do at Dashdot is work out a sort of longer term plan for people and sort of work out what the goal is and then reverse engineer how to get there by purchasing the right investment properties in the right order for somebody's individual situation. So, is there a big goal that you have at the end? And it's perfectly okay if you don't.
Yeah, I think there is a goal, but I think your goals are always changing in life too. Like I think when I first got into property, I sort of thought, oh yeah, 10 properties is where I'm going to get to. But then as I sort of started investing in property, you sort of think, oh, I could buy another property, or I could go on holiday, and then you sort of migrate to what's more important. So I mean, yeah, obviously I'd like to keep going down the property investing and get another few properties under the belt. But I 10 properties used to be what I thought was the number. But at the same time, like one property can have the same value as 10 properties. It's sort of just, yeah. But yeah, for me at the moment, I'll probably look at doing something again when I get back from Africa. So probably in 12 months' time, I'll look at going again, I think. Deep down, I know I probably should be doing something now. But I mean, I'm more interested in my travel than getting another property at the moment.
It's a wonderful position to be in. And this is something that I've been learning more and more and more about the clients that we have and property investors in general. And it's almost as though we can put people into roughly two baskets. I know that, not everyone likes labels and things like that. There are hyper driven people who it's like, sort of like, get the next val and get the next val. How much can I borrow? How much can I scrimp and save? And really put themselves under a lot of pressure to maintain a portfolio, even if they need to feed it for a couple $100 a week kind of thing, or even more, right? Some people will be feeding a portfolio for like $3,000 a month kind of thing, right? Some people might decide to do that because that's the way that they are going to accumulate the equity fastest, or at least that's what the projections would indicate. And nothing's 100%. And then we have a lot of other people, a lot of other investors in Australia who are more of your approach, which is actually, this is going great. I don't want to put myself under lots of pressure. I want to enjoy the journey. I want to travel. I want to do those other things. The last thing I want to do is buy a property now, put myself under financial pressure. Like everything's nicely set up for me to do the project that I want to do, which is like seeing all of Africa. It sounds like a pretty awesome project. And so making sure that the psychology or the way people are thinking about portfolio design, I think, is becoming more and more important. And it's not necessarily just about how do we get to arbitrary goal as quickly as possible, but what are the lifestyle considerations along the way?
Yeah, and for me, like I think the journey is as important as the destination, if, in a way. Like I don't love property investing to the extent where it's the first thing I think about in the morning or the last thing I think about when I go to bed. But it's a tool. Like it's a tool that you can sort of use and manipulate to work for you.
And that means that you can spend all of your energy focused on
Yeah,
the things that you actually really, really love, which is
yeah. I'd
pushing
much
your
rather
energy.
go to Mauritania or Western Sahara or somewhere like that than look at a property.
Right. Well,
But if buying a property is going to let me do that, then that's I'm happy with that.
absolutely.
Yeah,
All right. Well, I know that you're a traveler. So to wrap up, just as a little bit of the human interest aspect,
yeah.
what's the most interesting country or countries that you've traveled to?
Probably. I went to Syria last year for a couple of weeks. That was a fascinating place.
Syria, the
Uh,
one with the war.
yeah, with the civil war. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was a fascinating place. Some of the happiest people. But probably maybe the most fun. Probably Argentina.
Oh, really? Okay.
Love Argentina. Yeah,
Yep.
yeah. People are crazy. Cool fun. Lots of fun. Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
that's not as much of a surprise as Syria.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah.
normally, when you say to someone, what's the most interesting place you've been to? It's not the place that they visited while there was a war happening. That's sort of like the
Yeah,
scary.
most of the war is finished, but I guess it's two countries on the opposite end of the scale, depending what people like. The reason for people travel. I mean, most people that want to go and sit on a beach in Ibiza for a few days aren't the people that are going to go and climb Mount Everest. So I guess there's lots of different people that sort of do things on opposite ends of the scale.
Right. So, what sort of places really interest you?
I like interesting places where the people have got a story. Where like the people's story might be unrelatable to you because you haven't sort of experienced that, but you can sort of try and understand. Imagine how different life would be there growing up.
And that's what makes it interesting.
That's what makes it interesting.
Yeah. Because if you just go to sort of like we can all tell from your accent that you're from Scotland, but if you were to pop down to Manchester, it's sort of like the weather's pretty much the same.
It's not all that different.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's like, yeah, well, the accent's a bit different, but after that,
And we all view life based on every experience we've ever been exposed to, right? So if you were to put yourself in someone else's shoes that's had a completely different set of experiences, wouldn't it be fascinating to know how differently you'd view the world?
I do find that living in another country, right, living in Japan, and the Japanese lens for looking at anything is so different in so many respects. And so, yeah, I guess it's true what they say: travel broadens the mind. But yeah, you're not just doing the pop over to Fiji, pop over to Bali, do that sort of thing, sit on the beach, but doing the really really interesting stuff. And property is able to support you on the journey, make sure that you can do it without having any stress about what's happening back at home with the like. Could you imagine trying to do that with a share portfolio?
Yeah. Oh, you'd be staring at your phone even longer every day. All right, an hour's screen time's enough.
All right. Well, any last bits of advice? Any final thoughts or anything like that before we wrap up?
I don't think so. Just do whatever makes you happy.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a very important message.
Says the guy that's about to go and do night shift tonight, but never mind.
Well, do enough of what you need to do the
Yeah,
things that make you happy. That's probably the little refinement on that, right? You got to pay the
yeah,
price somehow, but try
yeah.
to pay it in the right way, in the right amount, so that you can maximize your overall enjoyment. So it's awesome to see someone having such a good time, and property being the asset class of choice, making sure that it supports everything there.
It's a good with the bad as well, though, isn't it? Like you gotta work hard and appreciate. Like the more you work for something, I think the more you appreciate it. So you gotta put in the hours. You gotta put in the work to get something. But yeah,
There's a sense of pride that one gets once you've actually saved for something and done it yourself, as opposed to having something given to you, and that's sort of respect.
yeah, absolutely.
Right. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right. Well, on that note, Ronald, thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. It's been a really good chat, and
Yeah,
all the best for Africa. I imagine you're going to have some pretty awesome stories when you get back,
I
and
hope so,
maybe
mate. I hope.
hopefully we'll have you on the podcast again sometime.
Perfect. Thanks, Emil.
Thanks very much. Cheers. Bye.
Cheers. Bye bye.